I was a kid. I took my aunt, and I drew this like lily, this wild Indian lily, and I didn't want to give it to her because I was so proud of it. I was like, I'll never do this again. She said, "Honey, you can do that in a minute. You can do that drawing over in a minute." And I'm like, "Oh, I guess I can." And now I really can, but it's like 40 years later. Really, I could give her this page. And they're coming at you, kind of like going through a tunnel. I don't know where it came from, but I was always just thrilled at the idea of taking a piece of white paper and just pouring paint on it, just making marks, and seeing where they go. And as with a lot of people, life gives you other mandates when you're young. And so I ended up, I studied science. I was good at it. And I studied math and science and became a biologist. But my first job as a biologist, I was kind of almost shown the door right away because I had no experience in science, but I had drawings. And as I was going out the door, I said, "By the way, I have some drawings." And they said, "Oh, we'll come back. We want to see that." And I ended up, my first really professional career job I got because of my drawings. In fact, most of my jobs I've gotten because of my drawings somehow. It set me apart. We always go back to nature. We always go back to let nature rule. But what I learned in England is that we are nature, and that our relationship to nature has made landscapes, and that if you make rules like that, you just take all the delight out of the world. Mm-hmm. So I went to these massive gardens in England and France and Italy, and I learned about landscape design. And I learned about some of the experiences that lead us to this sense of openness and wonder. The surprise, the axes, the one beautiful specimen that's around the corner that just shocks you into awareness of all your senses. The idea that you have this knowledge in your hand, and that you've practiced a painting gesture, you've studied the thing, the object, the iris, the bamboo, and you have this knowledge in your hand. And if all of your systems are tuned, your machine is tuned, then you just let it go. And with one gesture of your hand, you make this beautiful ink stroke that says a bamboo forest, or says a mountain landscape against the ocean. And that's so became a part of my acquired DNA, I think. It's funny, I've always been fascinated by graphic images, by this bold black and white, by a sense of design. It's kind of like this thing in your head that you end up doodling all the time in staff meetings or whatever. But by using these geometric shapes, and then Mylar is wonderful because it doesn't accept anything. So I use raw ink, I use like colored inks, and just pool them on top of this in these shapes. And the ink actually kind of mimics an earth process of the way water evaporates on a desert, or the way the way ponding works. And so as the ink evaporates, it creates these little isolated ponding edges. There's this advantage sometimes in trying to do something you're good at with your best hand tied behind your back. Because you can be glib. You can kind of get really attached to your talents, whatever they may be. And so to go back to being, discovering a way that's not familiar is really cool. So that, to draw and do ink on Mylar is a way of handicapping yourself and coming up with something that you could not possibly have planned. I'm sure, like with everything, I could do, if I did enough of these, I might be able to control it to some degree, but why bother? It's kind of goes back to this, there's a kind of a, how do you say, a back and forth between control and this freedom and chaos. This is the Corsair. Boston Ballet did the Corsair, which is a kind of very questionable fable about pirates and Islam and princesses and stuff. But it's full of interest. And so often when I go to a performance, I'll sit with the book in my lap in the dark and draw a blind. And I won't know what's on the page until the intermission, until the lights come up and I can actually see. And I try to gauge where I am on the page so that I can fill pages and move on. And I actually have done lots of life drawing, figure drawing, and so I know the body. But you never know how the body behaves in motion. And this is applicable to drawing birds in flight, to getting quick views of things that, often the moment passes so fast. So how do you get some of the drama and detail and gesture of the moment? So I do this all the time. I just fill books full of blind drawings of dancers or people moving. But then, sometimes I'll do more careful studies. Hands, for example. Hands are one of the great models to study from. I went to the love music, so I went to the Jazz Fest in New Orleans, and sometimes it's just impossible. This woman with the tambourine, her was just a continuous athlete, and just moving with the music completely. This is like what we all aspire to, as an artist or whatever, to have the expression just so intuitively in your body that you leave thought behind and you just move and responding, of course, to the music. I have 20 blank panels, birch panels. This is a really nice format, indestructible in a way. And so this came out of, I was doing a GPS project on the Outer Banks in North Carolina. We were kind of mapping the beaches, which are constantly changing, just like Cape Cod. And we were coming into a harbor, and all of a sudden there was a power outage. And so the pilots of the ferry boat, big old ferry boat, were standing on top of the bridge with flashlights trying to catch the reflectors of all of these channel markers. Whoa. We had a big old boat carrying cars and stuff, just like creeping into this dark town. It was so beautiful. But I'm really interested in the idea of sailing directions. Traditionally boats You can sail all across the ocean, but then a local harbor pilot will hop on the boat and guide you into port, because almost no one is capable of docking a big vessel without some local knowledge. Just a few simple colors, and I love the way the wood comes through as if it were contours on the landscape, you know, the grain of the wood. So that's a project that I'm not afraid to talk about, because I think I will really do it.
This is our little, so the whole idea of the show, of the whole idea that I wanted to get across, was this idea of the scale that we live in. You know, we live in this little scale where jumping off this cliff is a big deal. But this is nothing compared to being like 500 feet deep out there where that tanker is. And that's nothing compared to being 2 miles deep over there at the continental shelf. So there's these leaps of scale, and we are increasingly tiny in that. But we're the only animal, we have the consciousness, the awareness to actually see all those things, to be awed. First of all, to understand scale and distance and depth and space. But secondly, to be awed by it, to be able to take it in and see it in relation to ourselves and our sense of self. We have a sense of self, but if we don't ever take it out into the world, then our sense of self consists of whatever, you know, is at arm's length in a little box. Here, our sense of self can encompass, you know, hundreds of miles of ocean. That's what I'm after.
this world that we live in that most people are not aware that we're in. Cape Cod is the southern end of the Gulf of Maine. Nova Scotia is the northern end. It's not really in the ocean. The ocean's out here at the continental shelf. And so when we see tides and waves and weather and stuff, it's happening. It's a subset of the world that's happening in this basin that's connected to the larger globe. So how can my work, my painting work, my what I put on the wall, be these keyholes into a larger world like that? Because there's a set of rules that you create, and you're voluntarily signing up for this project. But once you make the rules and follow them, then something will happen. You know, I think every good artist, the work they make is the result of just agreeing to a set of rules and following them through and seeing where they take you. I used to find that starting work was really terrifying and was scary to even share it before you knew whether it was anything or not. 'Cause I just had this fear of starting and not finishing things. But I just have come to this place with the support of the Schoolhouse Gallery and the support of my friends and the people who have enjoyed my work. Is I have a real confidence that if I live long enough, I can do almost anything that I want to do. It won't come out that way. It won't have control. I won't be able to predict how it's going to come out. But I can start something and I can finish it, that's like total success.